The first explosions on Kharg Island did not just shake a military base, they shook the center of Iran's economic lifeline. In the darkness of the Persian Gulf, the strategic oil hub that handles the majority of Iran's crude exports suddenly became the focus of a powerful strike. Satellite images and regional intelligence reports quickly confirmed that multiple military installations connected to Iran's missile and naval infrastructure had been hit. The message behind the attack was unmistakable, but what happened next inside Tehran may be far more dangerous. Within hours of the strike, emergency meetings were reportedly held between commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Iran's top security leadership. These were not routine discussions. According to regional security analysts and intelligence assessments circulating in diplomatic circles, Iran's leadership began reviewing retaliation plans that had been prepared for years, plans designed specifically for a moment like this. Because Kharg Island is not just another military facility, it is the economic heart of Iran's oil system. Nearly 90% of Iran's oil exports pass through this island before entering global markets. Tankers line up offshore to load crude that travels from Iranian fields through pipelines that converge at this single strategic point. For decades, Iranian military planners have treated Kharg as one of the most heavily protected assets in the country, and now that asset has been attacked. For Iran's leadership, the calculation immediately becomes political as much as military. A direct strike on such a critical site cannot simply be ignored. In the complex power structure of Tehran, showing weakness after an attack like this could undermine the credibility of the state itself. That is why the tone coming out of Tehran began to change almost immediately after the attack. At first, Iranian officials publicly condemned the strike, calling it a direct violation of sovereignty and a dangerous escalation in the Persian Gulf. But within hours, the language from senior military commanders and government representatives became far more serious. Statements issued by officials linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps began emphasizing that Iran would not leave such an attack unanswered. Instead of simply criticizing the strike, they began issuing clear warnings. Warnings that retaliation was not only possible, but inevitable if Iran's strategic infrastructure continued to be targeted. Behind these statements was a carefully calculated message meant for Washington and its allies. Iran has prepared for this scenario for years, and any attack on its territory could trigger responses far beyond a single battlefield. Those warnings did not focus only on direct military retaliation. Iranian officials also began pointing towards something far more sensitive: the wider stability of the entire Persian Gulf region. They stressed that if pressure on Iran continued, the consequences would not remain limited to one island or one strike. Instead, the ripple effects could spread across energy routes, shipping lanes, and military bases throughout the Middle East. In particular, they repeatedly referenced one extremely strategic location that sits at the center of global energy security: the narrow maritime corridor through which a massive share of the world's oil supply travels every single day. By highlighting this choke point, Iran was sending a powerful signal to the global community that any escalation against Tehran could quickly transform into a crisis affecting international trade, global oil markets, and the economic stability of countries far beyond the Middle East. The Strait of Hormuz. This narrow maritime corridor connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. At its tightest point, the shipping lanes are only a few kilometers wide. Yet every day, massive oil tankers pass through it, carrying millions of barrels of crude toward Asia, Europe, and beyond. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply travels through this single passage. That makes it one of the most important economic choke points on Earth, and Iran sits directly beside it. For decades, Iranian military doctrine has focused heavily on controlling or threatening this corridor in times of conflict. Unlike the United States, Iran does not try to dominate the seas with large fleets of aircraft carriers. Instead, it focuses on asymmetric warfare, strategies designed to create maximum disruption using smaller, faster, and more unpredictable forces. Swarming speedboats, hidden naval mines, shore-based anti-ship missiles, and large stockpiles of ballistic missiles capable of reaching targets across the region. This strategy is built around a simple reality. If Iran cannot defeat a stronger navy in open battle, it can still make the battlefield extremely dangerous, and the Strait of Hormuz provides the perfect environment for that strategy. Small attack boats can move quickly between islands, missiles can be launched from coastal mountains, mines can be deployed quietly in shipping lanes. Even limited attacks in such a narrow corridor can cause massive disruption to global trade. That is why every escalation between Iran and the United States immediately raises fears about Hormuz. Because once shipping becomes unsafe there, the entire global energy system begins to feel the pressure. But Iran's retaliation planning does not stop at the sea. Over the past 2 decades, the country has invested heavily in missile technology. Iran now possesses one of the largest missile arsenals in the Middle East, including short-range and medium-range ballistic missiles capable of striking targets hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. Many of these missiles are operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the elite military organization that plays a central role in Iran's strategic operations. These missile forces have already demonstrated their capabilities in previous conflicts. In past confrontations, Iran has launched ballistic missile strikes against military installations hosting American forces in the region. These attacks showed that Iranian missiles can reach distant bases with surprising precision. For American planners, this creates a difficult challenge. The Middle East is not just a map filled with borders and alliances. It is a battlefield layered with American military power. Across the region, the United States operates a vast network of strategic installations, major air bases capable of launching long-range strike aircraft, heavily fortified naval facilities that host warships and submarines, intelligence centers monitoring regional activity, and logistics hubs that keep American military operations running across several continents. From the Persian Gulf to the Eastern Mediterranean, these bases form the backbone of U.S. power projection in the region. But there is one uncomfortable reality that military planners in Washington understand very clearly. Many of these installations sit within striking distance of Iran's missile arsenal. From underground launch sites hidden in Iran's mountains and deserts, ballistic and cruise missiles can reach deep into the Gulf region within minutes. That means airfields, naval docks, radar stations, and command facilities. The very infrastructure that sustains American operations could suddenly find themselves under threat if Tehran decides to respond. And this is where the situation becomes far more dangerous than a single retaliatory strike. Iran's strategy has never relied on just one battlefield or one attack. Military analysts have long warned that Tehran's retaliation doctrine is built around overwhelming pressure from multiple directions at the same time. Missiles fired directly from Iranian territory toward regional military targets, long-range drones launched by allied forces operating across neighboring countries, fast naval units disrupting commercial shipping lanes that carry energy supplies through the Persian Gulf, cyber units attempting to penetrate digital systems connected to military logistics, communication networks, and critical infrastructure. Each of these actions alone could cause serious disruption, but launched together, they create a complex web of conflict that stretches across land, sea, air, and cyberspace. Instead of a single front line, the confrontation could explode into several simultaneous flashpoints across the region. And that is exactly why security experts are watching the current crisis so closely. Because many analysts believe Iran has spent years quietly preparing contingency plans for a moment like this. Plans designed not just to retaliate, but to unleash a coordinated wave of pressure across the entire regional network if its territory or strategic infrastructure were ever directly attacked. The Kharg Island strike may have triggered the review of those plans. Inside Tehran's leadership structure, decisions about major military responses are typically made by the Supreme National Security Council, a powerful body that includes top political leaders, senior military commanders, and intelligence officials. Ultimately, the final authority rests with the country's supreme leader, whose approval is required for major strategic actions. When that council meets during moments of crisis, the discussions can determine whether tensions cool down or spiral into regional confrontation. Meanwhile, military movements across the region are being watched closely. American naval forces operating in the Persian Gulf have increased patrol activity. Additional surveillance aircraft have been monitoring Iranian missile bases and naval installations. Defensive systems at key bases have reportedly been placed on higher alert. At the same time, Iran's own forces have been conducting exercises and deployments designed to demonstrate readiness. Fast attack craft moving through the Gulf, missile units repositioning along coastal areas, and increased activity near strategic islands that overlook major shipping routes. Each side understands that the next move will send a powerful signal. But behind the military maneuvering lies another layer of the conflict: the global economic dimension. Energy markets are extremely sensitive to instability in the Persian Gulf. When news of the Kharg Island strike spread, traders immediately began calculating the possible consequences. Even small disruptions to Iranian exports can influence global oil prices. But a larger escalation affecting the Strait of Hormuz could create far greater shockwaves. Shipping companies begin rerouting vessels, insurance costs surge, energy prices fluctuate sharply. Within hours, financial markets around the world start reacting. This is one reason why international diplomatic channels often activate quickly during crises in the Gulf. Governments understand that preventing escalation in this region is not just about military stability, it is about protecting the global economy. Yet diplomatic efforts often struggle to keep pace with military developments. Missiles move faster than negotiations, and decisions made in a command center can change the entire strategic environment in minutes. Iran's long-term strategy has never been built on appearing weak or isolated. From Tehran's perspective, survival in a hostile geopolitical environment requires something very different: the ability to prove that the country cannot be cornered, pressured, or forced into submission. For decades, Iran has faced waves of economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and military threats. Yet instead of shrinking its capabilities, the country quietly invested in building a complex system of deterrence. Missile programs expanded deep inside underground facilities. Drone technology evolved from simple surveillance platforms into long-range strike systems capable of traveling hundreds of kilometers. At the same time, Iran strengthened strategic relationships and built influence networks across the region. To outside observers, these developments were not random. They were part of a deliberate doctrine designed to ensure that any attack on Iran would never remain limited to Iranian territory alone. This doctrine created something far more complicated than a traditional military defense. Over the years, groups aligned with Iran began operating across multiple countries in the Middle East, forming a broad strategic network that stretches across several frontiers. These groups provide Tehran with additional layers of pressure that can be activated during moments of confrontation. Instead of responding from one location, Iran can project influence across different directions at once. In one scenario, long-range drones could suddenly appear over sensitive shipping routes in nearby seas, threatening commercial vessels that carry vital energy supplies. In another scenario, precision missiles could target regional military installations connected to adversaries operating near Iran's borders. At the same time, cyber units linked to Iranian networks could attempt to disrupt digital infrastructure, communication systems, financial networks, or logistical operations that support military activity. Each of these actions alone creates disruption, uncertainty, and economic pressure. But when combined, they form a strategy designed to stretch an opponent's defenses across multiple battlefields simultaneously. This is exactly what makes Iran's strategic posture so difficult to confront. Any direct pressure on Tehran risks triggering responses that spread far beyond a single strike or a single location. Military planners in several countries understand that confronting Iran does not simply mean facing one conventional army. It means dealing with a layered system of missiles, drones, maritime tactics, cyber operations, and regional alliances that can activate across different fronts at the same time. In practical terms, this dramatically raises the cost of confrontation for Iran's adversaries. Every base must be defended, every shipping lane must be monitored, every digital system must be protected. The battlefield becomes larger, more unpredictable, and far harder to control. But this strategy also carries enormous risk for the entire region. Once multiple actors begin responding across different locations, escalation can accelerate very quickly. A drone strike in one sea can trigger retaliation at a military base somewhere else. A missile launch can provoke counterstrikes against strategic infrastructure. Within a short time, what began as a limited confrontation can transform into a chain reaction spreading across the Middle East. And that is precisely the scenario many analysts fear could emerge if retaliation following the Kharg Island strike spreads beyond a single target and into multiple battlefields. History offers a clear warning about how rapidly such situations can spiral out of control in the Persian Gulf. During the final years of the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, the region witnessed what became known as the Tanker War. Oil tankers moving through the Gulf were attacked, naval mines appeared in critical shipping routes, and tensions escalated until Iranian forces and the United States Navy found themselves in direct confrontation. Warships exchanged fire across the water. Mines damaged commercial vessels and military ships alike. Oil platforms and energy infrastructure became targets in a conflict that threatened the stability of global oil supplies. What began as pressure inside one war slowly expanded into a dangerous naval struggle involving some of the world's most powerful militaries. And today, with far more advanced weapons, faster missiles, and a global economy even more dependent on the stability of the Persian Gulf, the consequences of a similar escalation could be far greater. Even limited confrontations created international crises. Today, the stakes are even higher. Global energy demand is enormous. Financial markets react instantly to geopolitical shocks, and modern missile technology allows strikes to travel across hundreds of kilometers in minutes. All of this means that a single escalation can ripple outward with extraordinary speed. Which brings the focus back to Iran's next decision. Retaliation is almost certain in some form. The political pressure inside the country makes it extremely difficult for leadership to absorb such a strike without responding. But the form of that retaliation remains the critical question. Will it be symbolic, designed mainly to send a warning? Will it target military assets directly? Or will it focus on economic pressure through disruptions in shipping routes and energy infrastructure? Each option carries different risks. Each option triggers different reactions from the United States and its allies. And each option moves the region closer or further away from large-scale confrontation. Right now, military commanders on every side are studying radar screens, satellite imagery, and intelligence reports, trying to anticipate the next move. Because in the tense silence that follows a strike like the one on Kharg Island, the most dangerous moment is often the one that comes next. The moment when retaliation begins. The moment when missiles launch. The moment when a regional conflict suddenly expands beyond control. And in the narrow waters of the Persian Gulf, where the world's energy lifeline passes between two tense coastlines, that moment could change far more than a single battle. It could reshape the balance of power across the entire Middle East and send shockwaves through the global economy that reach far beyond the horizon of the Gulf itself.